Today I'm going to have a go at painting this scene, this woodland scene with the bluebells in water and mixable oils, and you can see it's early spring, so we've got some nice spring green colours there, varying in intensity. Near the foreground we can see quite a lot of quite dark greens here, some more spring, a little bit more yellow in there, but we've got this lovely shape of these trees. I must try and capture that. There's a temptation in painting trees just to paint what we know, not necessarily what we see, so they tend to be a bit generic unless you're very careful. So each tree is individual character, and these have got some quite interesting tangle there, but of course the feature element has got to be the bluebells, and we have a nice track on the left here, bottom left hand corner, which will take our eye into the scene. So what I'm going to do now is just sketch out a rough mapping and then gradually work it up, go from the general shapes and then to the particular, and try and get some detail. It'll be more impressionistic in a way. I think that's my style, but I try to keep it as so we get a fair indication of the real thing, so I'll be fairly close to it as we go along. So next we have to map it in, and also I ought to tell you the colours that I've got on my palette. I've got, let's get a pointer to show you what I'm starting out with anyway. We've got titanium white, Naples yellow, cadmium yellow, cadmium orange, cadmium red, crimson alizarin permanent, burnt sienna, raw umber, yellow ochre, sap green, olive green, some purple here, and ultramarine blue and cerulean blue there. So we've got a fair mixture of these. So we'll start off with a little mixture of umber. So I'll have to get a little umber going here, just to sketch it in really, just to get a sort of kind of map of what we need to do. So this is just a broad outline of the area that we're going to cover. As we come in, and here we've got our greens. Just put the mapping in here. Comes in here. Map of green here. Our bluebells are going to be in this area, a little bit down here, and we've got branches coming over here. Got another group of trees here. Got three big main boughs really that I want to try and bring in. One coming off like this, and then of course we've got quite a lot of branches coming across here, and here we've got our path which will lead the eye in to our scene. That's the plan. Always a good idea to have something to lead you in, and all this is going to be green, varying shades of green, obviously, and in the distance there we've got some more boughs and trees. I must try and keep them a little less chroma, a little less colour, a little bit faded out, as things in the distance always are, of course, and that's the way to push them back. If I have that too intense, it's will bring it too much forward, and we don't want that. We want some sort of sense of depth, and we do that by varying the colour. Those colours to the foreground will be more intense. So we'll leave that, I think, as our mapping in. It's a good idea to squint your eyes as well to try and see where the darkest darks are and where they're less dark, because that again will help us get some depth. So that's pretty much the layout. It's a little darker here under this woodland here. So there we are, there's our broadly our mapping out. Right, now the next thing we need to do, I think, is put, I think, a bit of a wash in to give us some tonal values, because we want to get rid of all that white that we can see there. So I think I'm going to use some of this green, some of this sap green, and then I'm going to put a little bit of raw sienna with it, and a little bit of white, a little titanium white there, and sort of wash it in really. I think we need to some cover this white, otherwise you can't judge your values. I think we'll just get a little more into that, just to, I think I need a little bit cooler there, a little bit whiter. There we go, we'll get a little bit of wash in here, fairly biggest bristle brush, just to give us some sort of idea. And of course this is a bit alarming when you look at this. you think, oh my God, you know, how am I going to make anything of this? It's a very common feeling. This is all paintings you'll find will go through this. A lot of artists refer to it as the ugly phase, or the awkward. And you know, it's a great temptation when you start to give up right there and then. Oh, this isn't going anywhere. But you must hang in there. You'd be amazed how it can turn as we fill in. We get some more details in. So I think we need still more white. This is right, a little bit of white. Just give us some light tone to push it back. So we'll be painting over this when we bring our trees in. Now this is water mixable oils, Winsor and Newton. It's a lot easier to work with than the conventional oil, much easier to clean up. When you finish, clean your brushes, clean them in water. Oh, it's rattling. Right, I think I'm going to leave that. Perhaps a little bit more white. It's a little too bright here. So we'll drop in some white here. Down here is going to be much darker green when we lay that in. But let's try now and get in something to represent our sky. In my reference photograph, it's a sort of rather early spring, rather greyish, pale blue, certainly not a bright summer sky. I think we're too early, much as we would like it. Right, now I think I need to go and get a little blue in here. So I'm going to wipe my brush off a little. Just take the worst of any green or anything like that off of it. Right, that's done. That's okay. Now I'm going to make a little bit of, I think, cerulean. This, can you see this one? This little cerulean one there. And I think I'll put a little bit of raw sienna to dull it down just a smidgen. Yes, I think we need to do that. A little grey, perhaps a little bit of ultramarine, a little bit more white. Yes, I think we can go with this. Some of it down here, because we'll see when we put the trees in, we'll be able to leave some of the sky showing through. some sky holes. So roughly get this in, and I think we need a little bit of blue to appear here. And we've got some up in this area too. Yes, I'm mixing again the cerulean, titanium white, and a little bit of raw sienna here. Just dull it down a little bit. Almost a grey blue, a little bit of brown sometimes. Make it a little grayer. Right, there we go. But we want, a lot of painting is about contrast, is getting one colour shape, how it makes contrast with the other. So I've got to have sufficient lightness, so this will appear behind my trees when I block in my woodland. Bring the sky down a little bit there. Right, how does that look? Yes, I think it's, have another look at my reference photograph. Yes, I think I could perhaps put a little hint of purple in there just to add a little interest. You don't have to slavishly follow your reference, where it will add something to your painting. You can make amendments, or artistic license as it's known. Right, okay, I think that's got us somewhere along the road. A little bit there. Right, okay. Let's leave it there for the moment. See where we can go. Got a little bit of a gap there. Put some colour, bring some colour down. Right, now the next thing we ought to do is get something in this foreground. We can block that out. A little bit of umber, a little bit of crimson alizarin, a bit of green, burnt umber. It's a sort of browny reddish colour actually. This track, this cycle track that I came along in a local woodland. Again, we're just trying to map it in with a little bit of wash it in really. Yes, do this. I'm painting fairly thinly at the moment, but as I come along, I can add some thicker paint, which will give us some more texture. Some thicker paint, that will be. I can lay it on, but I'm trying this new technique to paint it thinner initially. Some artists do this. Some like to put it quite thickly on. But I think I'm going to leave it like that for the moment. And then we're going to get some green in now. This white band we see here, we can put some of the greens in. So, a bit of sap green and a little bit of olive green perhaps. As in here I've got quite an area of green here, which I can map in now. Green comes right down to here actually, right through here. So just tickle it in at the moment. Say this is very thin paint. Just want to get rid of all this white for the moment so we can see where we are and where we're going. Right, okay. And I need a soft edge along here. I need to introduce a little soft. I don't want any hard edge, any straight line. I just keep it nice and soft and muted on the edge of this trackway. Again, I'll put more detail in when we're down the road. Now, while I'm at it, part of this green, I need to darken up a little bit. Quite a bit really. So I'm mixing olive green and I think more sap green. Yes, we need quite an element here to give some shape and form to this bank of weeds. They're all along here. Some up here too. Bit of a glade there. And then some lighter green in places we need. Again, I need to soften that edge there. Along here. Right, and get a little bit of shadowing along where this track meets this greeny element. Again, we could put different colours, different greens. Can add by adding some yellow to it as we go. Here, right. Let's see if I can add a little bit of yellow to give us a little bit of a different green. lighter green. More spring green, best to add yellow. Up off my brush, still got too much green on it. I need to try and keep my paint clean. I've got some yellow. It's tricky when you try to get wet onto wet, in a sense. We usually talk wet on wet when we're doing watercolour, but well, this is rather wet. It's still tricky, so you need a somewhat of a lighter touch when you dab your paint on. A bit of green there, different green. I want some lighter green here too. So I'll put in a little bit of yellow there, but I've got to keep a space for my bluebells, of course. All right, a little bit more. I need some white to lighten these greens up a bit. Yes, I think there's more green along here. Whiter, or lighter green coming into here as well. Right. Oops. Yellow, orange, I don't need that. Right. I think I need to get some more olive in here. Right. Like this. And Dab them in. Probably a little bit too bright. I think I'll put a little white on that in a moment. More of a patch than I'm doing there. Or in here. Right, let's get some more white organised. Always get through more white than any other. So I'm buying big tubes. Here we go, a nice good blob of that. So I can more white here into the purple. Got a little purple there, but I need to have a lighter white, especially as it goes further back. So just having a quick squint at my reference. There we are. A little bit here too. Right. Right, let's get some green now behind. And so let's set them off a little bit more. Or a little bit of sap green, which is this one, sap green. So let's have a look what I can do. I've got some of that. Just a little touch, I think. And then gently introduce right, that's some lighter greens, I think. Oops, that's too light. That's what we need. A little bit here. to get a softer edge here. It's too sharp, that green coming up against that light, so I sweep it down there to soften it. We'll have got some greens here as well. Can pop those in. Yes, I need some to darken up some of my greens, so I add a little bit of blue, a little bit of raw sienna, so I can get a bit more blue here, a little dabs of green in here too. Here too. Right. Let's get some dark. Right, let's try and soften the edge of that path, because we need to put a little texture in it as well. Well, I've got some colour on my brush, I can just add a little texture so it looks like a realistic path. Right. Ghost in a few of the new shoots on the trees. I'll put in the trees in a minute and put them basic form in, so it will start to make a little bit of sense. Right, okay, let's see if we can get some of these trees in then. Some of these main boughs anyway. So we'll have a bit of burnt umber, I think, for that, into our green. And we'll start with some boughs like this. Quite tricky trying to get the paint to stick when you've when it's also wet. This is the all-in-one session. This is known as alla prima. So it represents something of a challenge. So I think we need some more darker colours. What if I think I need some umber, some burnt umber, if I can find it. Burnt umber, here we are. A little bit more burnt umber, I think, is called for. Of course, I'm avoiding black. It's not a good idea to use black, or the convention is anyway, but you can create your own blacks. Some dark blues and browns, and even a little red seems to do the trick. Right, let's now how am I going to do this? I want a realistic. On there. Yes, very tricky when it's so wet. Because you tend to lift off, and unless you're not light, you pull off the paint that's below. So I've got to be a little lighter touch with this. I'm turn my brush around. This is a flat I'm using at the moment. Very tricky to get the paint off of your brush when you're painting on where there are other layers of paint. So I think the trick is just gently lay it on with a light touch, trying not to disturb the paint you have below. All right, how are we going? I think we need to beef up that. Of course, we've got lots of branches coming off. I have to deal with the relative tones, as those that, you know, show those that are catching the light, but that's some way down the road. We've got to do this really. We need to lay in, probably with a smaller brush. I'll do that in a minute. Of course, we've got well, it's coming slowly but surely. Another one here. Those that are in the distance, not so dark, so catching more light actually in this picture, but I've got to try and deal with the finer brushes, the finer branches later. At the moment, we're just trying to create our forest, our bluebell wood. Right. Now, when do we put in those finer branches? We could try now. You don't have to put everything you see in your reference. Just try and, in fact, it's sometimes wiser to simplify it. If you let it simple, the viewer will add something to it, their imagination. They see things that you don't see sometimes. These branches here and trees, they're more in the background, so they're less prominent, sort of ghosted out by the foliage that's around. So I don't put everything in. Now, I think I could put in some of the smaller branches. So if I get a smaller brush, what shall I do? I need a little skinny blinky one, a little, maybe a rigger. If I've got one to hand, let's have a look. Oh, right. Okay, we'll have a break here, I think. Well, you can probably see, as long as the light's not too bright on there, that I've put quite a few more branches in. But I think I need to put a little bit more blue in here. I think I'm going to do that. A little bit more, so we can get the bluebells. Really, as that's the principal feature of the painting. It's always a good idea to, when you do a painting, to try and assess, say to yourself before you doing it, before you embark on it, what am I really trying to capture? Got a little bit there. I think we could probably put some here amongst this. Got a few here. But we need, that's a little bit bright. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of white to the blue there. Push them back a little bit. This is what we need to do. And put some here. Little flecks of blue. Let me think. Should we get a little bit bluer or not? It's tricky. Don't want them too bright in the distance, because it brings them too much forward. You can't have brighter in the foreground, of course. Probably a good idea. Now, what do we think? Is that blue? Or what if I mix a little bit of cerulean? That's lighter blue with my white. Let's have a look at that. Oh yes, I think that. Yes, I think that reads a little bit better. It's a little bit of a cooler blue, really, than ultramarine is. It's a bit richer. I think we could go with that. Put a little dab of more richer purple, perhaps, in places. Let me see. And then should we have bits of colour here? Maybe we could put a few more in this area. Yes, I think we could do that. Right. Using the pointed end of my brush there to try and stipple a little bit of blue in. I'm trying to vary the intensity of the blue as well, because that would vary depending on the amount of light that it's catching. I think put a little bit of white. Add a few highlights here. Put a bit of green as well. Green. Green and blue. Mixing a bit of my yellow. And my cadmium yellow. Blue in here. Right. How are we doing? Let's just see if I can beef up some of the darks. Got some darks along with my burnt umber. I think we could played with it. Different sort of blues. It's good to vary the colours to make more interest for the viewer. It's quite tricky to put paint down on wet paint as well, so you've got to be very gentle how you do it. Just lay it down as best you can, just gently touching plenty of paint on your brush and sort of lay it on so you get some darker down here as we're approaching the ground. It's always a little darker because you're not getting so much sun, it's not coming down. Right. So we've got a good bit of texture there. Varied. There's a little cooler in the distance, which we want to keep. We've introduced a few branches along the way. Try and make it read. Right. Perhaps we should leave it there now. Or should I put a little more? I've got some Payne's Grey here, which is, you can use to darken things up a little bit. I think I'll go with that. Put a little bit sort of bluey grey. Don't want to use black straight out of the pot because, or out of the tube, because that will kill a painting very quickly. But you could use something like a bit of Payne's Grey. This is a bluey grey. Give a lot more dark to the trunks. Again, I've got the lay it down without disturbing the paint below my first pass with, because down in here, of course, it is quite dark. This tangle of boughs here. They get a little bit of light up the top. The sun can get through the boughs a little better. Right, I think I should leave it at that before I overwork it, which is always an issue with all painting. Not so much so, I think, with the watercolour, or I should say with watercolour it is more of an issue because it's harder to correct things in watercolour. And I only do it to a certain extent, but with oil you got much more chance of doing it, but it's still possible to overwork. You've got to know when to stop. When is enough enough? Because you've got to have your darks to set off your lights. So it's a delicate balance to know when you worked it enough. Right, I think I'm going to call a halt to that before I overwork it. There tends to be some black there, darker colour, but in my reference photograph, but remember it's a painting I'm doing. I'm not trying to copy the whole reference photograph. I'm just trying to take what I want from it and use my license, my artistic license, to make it work for me. What I could do is with my palette knife, you can scratch in a few lights like this, especially if they're set against the dark, which will give you some of the white stalks. So we could put a few scratches here. to suggest some of the whites on the bark where it's got some light here and there. I'm trying to suggest the round form as well of the bark. You can do that sometime. Right. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it at that now. So there we have it. It's a woodland scene. Here's a photograph I took a few days ago in this woodland, and catching the early flash of the woodland, of the trees are just beginning to get some green, some coming onto their shoots. So I think I could put a few blocks in like this. No, I need something darker. So I'll get something on the edge of my palette knife and suggest tricky to do that, but see if we can. Just turn your palette knife a little on its edge so you catch a little of the blade. To keep that nice and light, really. Okay, there we have. I think we should call a halt at that. I hope you've enjoyed the demonstration here, my little attempt at watercolour, at oil painting I should say. I have been doing a lot of watercolour recently, but I thought I've got to get back and see if I can move my skill along a little bit with this. So it's good to get back. Totally different techniques needed. There are unique skills needed for watercolour and oil. Quite different in some ways, but the principles are still there. You've got to have the lights and the darks, atmospheric, perspective. That means it gets lighter in the distance, which is what I'm trying to do there. More vivid colour in the foreground, and texture. Try to give some more texture to represent things. And what you're trying to do is create interest. You want there to be lots of interest there for the viewer to look at it as they get drawn into the picture. So there we are then. Let's stop before I overcook it.